Apple typically hits it out of the park with their series, and this time they've lined up a stellar cast for the limited series Disclaimer. It features Cate Blanchett, Kevin Kline, Sacha Baron Cohen, and Kodi Smit-McPhee. So are you going to want to watch? Acclaimed journalist Catherine Ravenscroft built her reputation revealing the misdeeds and transgressions of others. When she receives a novel from an unknown author, she's horrified to realize she is now the main character in a story that exposes her darkest secrets. So, funny enough, the story is built so that just about everybody is unlikable at some point, which I know that's not a strong way to start. And to top it off, the first episode is convoluted as it jumps around a timeline in the effort to introduce us to characters, places, and relationships. To help us along, sometimes there's a narrator, speaking sometimes to a character and then other times to us as the audience, just in order to give background or details. Now, this is efficient in progressing the story, which I think is great. And then also the narration, it's voiced by Indira Varma, so it's easy to listen to as well. Now, the story centers around two families, the Ravenscrofts, which include Blanchett, Baron Cohen, and Smit-McPhee, with appearances by Layla George. And then there's the Brigstock family, made up of Kevin Kline, Leslie Mansville, and Louis Partridge. Now, we're shown past and present in alternating views as a story plays out that leads to an unraveling of just so many people. Now, here's the rub with this series. If you start it, you're gonna need to finish it all the way through. And if you stop, you're cheating yourself out of a very clever resolution. And I say this mainly because the first episode, it's a bit of a tough one to get through. But after that, the story all clicks, and then it moves flawlessly and easily through the timelines, and amongst even the characters, so that we can become enthralled in the dark story that ends up playing out. Now, Blanchett and Kline, they're the main focal points for the narrative, and they turn in some riveting performances. Both have moments that feature how excellently that they have mastered their craft. And on a side note, Kline is playing a British retired teacher, but all throughout this, because it is a British production, I kept wanting him to say something that Otto would say, like, "Don't call me stupid." But he maintained character. Honestly, though, I think it would have felt weird for him to do that, even though some of us would have appreciated it. Okay, tangent over. Back to the performances. Now, both showcase rawness and vulnerability, which is typically shown through rage, but it's still captivating and emotional. And because of how the story plays out, we also are able to form a lot of opinions on the characters. And I enjoyed what that meant for the story. At its heart, this is a relationship and family drama, full of the complications and imperfections of love, desire, and grief. When fully realized, the story is both touching and devastating, but it is a roller coaster ride before it ends. Now, the story and series, it's created, written, and directed by Alfonso Cuarón. And thanks to some of his other works, he's already demonstrated that he can effectively craft a narrative that's full of tension and nervousness while also staying focused on a human-centric storyline. And despite the more than handful of characters, the arcs, they really are narrow, not meandering about or going off on random tangents that distract, but each scene is used to reinforce the themes, the characters, and the outcomes. Now, just in case you need to know, this is a very adult series. The storylines, they're certainly not meant for kids thanks to how dense and relationship heavy they are. But then there are 2 episodes, and it's mainly episode 3, that you are not going to want to watch with your parents or a priest. Things get rather spicy, and they don't end quickly. So if you're offended by sex and or nudity, this episode, it's not going to be your bag. But I must say, for as provocative as the content is, it's also vital to the storytelling. Yeah, it might be a little bit gratuitous, but it's also imperative for what comes later. Now, as each episode went on, I became more and more invested in the twists, the unbelievable behaviors, and then the unraveling of psyches that we get to witness. The series, it also isn't light on surprising reveals. The more we learn about a character or an event, that's typically when a shoe is going to drop and we're treated to another shocker revelation, each time still building on the intricacies without distracting or diverting away from the arc. Now, like most Apple series, this is a weekly release, but thankfully each episode is close to an hour. And because they can be emotionally exhausting, one can feel satisfying as a watch. Now, I do think that as the show goes along, you might begin to get impatient, but that's just a reflection on how involved the story becomes. And as I said before, you do not want to miss the final episode. I mean, it's going to knock you on your butt. Now, something that was a major detractor for me, and hopefully it's just simply because I had screening copies, but the sound design in this was atrocious. Levels, they were just all over the place. And when an off-camera character would speak, the sound was distant and low, sometimes indiscernible. But then when a character in frame would speak, even within the same conversation, their voice was loud and crisp. And this happened consistently throughout the series. And then another constant audio annoyance was the mix of music, ambient sound, and then speech. Almost in every episode, there were stretches that I was seriously struggling to hear what was being said because of crashing waves or music coming from a record player or some other just loud audio that was overtaking the conversation. And it's not like these interactions were meaningless or inconsequential. They were pivotal discussions between characters, but they were almost impossible to make out. And because I had screeners, there also weren't subtitles or captions available. So I really am hoping that for the broadcast version, the mix is mastered so that the dialogue audio isn't muddled or lost behind the natural and atmospheric sounds. And if what I did hear is what you hear, turn on the captions so that you do not miss the dialogue. I mean, I just had to resolve myself that even after rewinding on certain parts, some of it was just lost and I had to guess through context. But outside of the audio issues, the nuanced and dynamic characterizations work to create visceral reactions to the characters, drawing us in through sympathy or ire with equal effectiveness. Cate Blanchett and Kevin Kline are perfectly matched as they go toe-to-toe through an emotionally devastating brawl, delivering flawed but fierce personas, both driven by love and grief. The story will wreck you if you engage with it, drawing you in with anguish, desire, lust, and rage to then present a heart-rending resolution that will etch itself in your mind. The creativity and novelty of both story and presentation are refreshing, and they continue to illustrate why Apple is thriving and winning within this series space. There's a ton of sex and nudity, a lot of profanity, and then some very brutal and disturbing violence. I give Disclaimer 4.5 out of 5 couches. Now again, I truly hope that the audio wonkiness was just limited to the screeners and it's not in the broadcast version so that you can fully enjoy the ride. Alright, have you seen any excellent dramas or thrillers lately? I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.